Good evening, everyone. Tonight I wanted to talk about something that, not that I'd forgotten, but was recently reminded about, which was that I wound up a few years ago writing a book review for a book called The Strength Switched, which is it's by Leah Waters, and it's called The New Science of something about the science of parenting, and basically it's the focus on strengths. So let's just focus there and why it's more important to focus on strengths than weaknesses. And in rereading that, I got to be reminded of a story that I included in that review, which was this moment when I had been working at a high school and we had the previous year lost our special education director, and I filled in for her. And then the first few days of school was orientation, and we had a new special education director, and something happened with him and I wound up having to fill in for him. And I was communicated to this with no time to plan. It was for academic support, and I had supported academic support before, but I didn't have access to all the things the teachers had. And I kind of was like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I walked in there and I thought, this is a simple thing to do. We can start here. And I gave each student a blank sheet of paper. These are high school students, 9th through 12th grade. I said, I want you to write down all of your classes, and then I want you to tell me what you think your strengths are that I should be aware of, and any concerns that you have about your academic classes and being able to be successful this semester. And so, to my surprise, when I collected these, I did other things. I didn't review them right then and there. This was something that I felt would help me kind of get a glimpse, as obviously teachers do, try and get a glimpse into who these students are and what you might need to do to help support them that year, that semester. And when I took them home and I looked at them, basically almost across the whole board, they were unable to articulate their strengths. It was, I don't know, was the answer. But when it came to concerns, and that was the question, it was concerns. What they put on that paper was pretty much across the board their diagnoses, which predominantly were ADHD, bipolar, anxiety disorder. Now, I asked about concerns. I asked about strengths. And so from my perspective, if you've gotten to be in high school and you don't have a clue what your strengths are, the education system's done you a disservice, because there's so much evidence of strengths on an everyday basis that it can be hard not to notice. And yet, a lot of times those things are not things that are highly valued in school, or they're not on the test. They're just not anyone's job to necessarily, except for you as a parent. It's your job. It's your job to do that. And so I highly recommend this book called The Strength Switch. And you can find Leah Waters. It's Lea Waters, PhD. She's part of the positive psychology kind of space. And she's got, videos out there, or TED Talks and things like that. And I just recommend you look at it, because what she talked about was a lot of times when you're seeing something negative in a child, it's actually an overuse of their strength, or it's the shadow side of it. It's, a kid who cares so much is going to obviously be very distraught when things are not feeling like they're just, and people are not being treated properly. And yet that might come out as a tantrum because they basically are just so in such pain for the fact that, and they don't know how to express that. So it's a really good book. And I just wanted to say that tonight, because for me, one of the things that I want to make sure I encourage parents to do is to spend way more time focused on discovering your children's strengths, in discovering, encouraging, and supporting them, right? And finding ways to allow them to operate more inside them. Gallup has done polls. We all know the Gallup polls, right? And student engagement polls, student engagement's pretty low. I think I heard recently the other day, it's like 30% of high school students are engaged. And really, when they asked them questions, it was that they very rarely use their strengths in school. And if you think about most of us as adults, the careers we choose, the roles we serve in, are all built upon using our strengths. And hopefully we know what those are. And I've met lots of adults who are just as clueless about what their strengths are, because no one has ever really affirmed them for those things. And again, they weren't what was being appreciated and valued. So I'm going to talk about strengths. I'm not going to talk about weaknesses. From an early intervention perspective, if you have a child that's struggling early on, they're much more gentle about the way that they try and help those children, and it can be very, very long-term, make a huge difference. Birth to 3, all of those times. When you start getting up into middle school, when you start getting up into elementary and middle school and high school, if you keep trying to fix a kid's strengths, you're sending a very clear message that there's something wrong with them, and the long-term consequences of that can be very detrimental. So think about it. The school will try to point them out, and they did it for me and my children over and over again. And I wish that I had pushed back more and more at that time, and that's why I'm sending you this message from the woman who may have missed the boat sometimes. Don't become focused on your children's strengths. Focused on their weaknesses. Focus on their strengths instead. Thank you.